people said they laughed so hard that their jaws ached.
David, when you were 22 years old, you drove to Chicago and you saw a comedy show entitled Void Where Prohibited by Law. What do you remember about this show?
Well, you know, at the time, back in 1971, I was working for my dad as a construction expediter. He was building office buildings, commercial buildings, and he had some videotape equipment. I mean, he didn't have it, but a friend of his had some, early Sony video decks, which reel-to-reel tapes, and he said, his friend would be willing to lend me this equipment. And I said, what would I do with video? I'm a film guy. And because I just graduated from college in film. And so he said, well, you could do, video. I mean, you can do film for industrial films for some of the Milwaukee manufacturing plants. This did not excite me at all. So I happened to drive down to Chicago. I had a date with a girl there. And we were wondering what could we do? And her roommate suggested, well, there's this show called Void Where Prohibited by Law, and it's in Newtown, and it's in a loft. I had no idea what it was, but we went, because that was how we were going to spend the evening. And I remember we went up some stairs, we paid probably $1, and it was a big room with a huge water bed filling the room, and a video monitor, a 25-inch monitor at one end and a Coke machine at the other. And we watched this show, and it was probably 70 or 75 minutes of, I guess, I don't remember what was in it, but scatological humor. I thought it was funny, and I don't think my date thought it was funny at all. But I thought, this is amazing. People paid money to see a video show. So that's when I had the idea, okay, we can borrow this video equipment and start a theater. And that was the whole start of the whole career, Kentucky Fried Theater, and led to everything. So I didn't even drive back to Milwaukee. I drove straight to Madison, where my brother was a senior in college or a junior in college. And I said, Jerry, I was just jumping up and down, drooling, saying, I found what we're going to do now, and we're going to start a theater. We'll do videotape, and we'll do funny bits. And I thought we could do as funny as what these people did in Chicago. So and so that's how the whole theater started.
When did you bring Kentucky Fried Theater to Los Angeles?
Well, we did a show called Vegetables in Madison. We rented the back of a bookstore, and we did that. It was very successful. We only did one show a night on Friday and Saturday, and we charged $1. And we didn't make money, but we did make enough money to buy some new video equipment. And so we decided we weren't going to go anywhere in staying in Madison, and some of the guys thought, well, we could go to a bigger city like Milwaukee. This did not excite me. It was almost like doing industrial films again for Alice Chalmers or whatever corporation was in Milwaukee. So, and this our other partner, Dick Chudnow, said, we got to go to LA, and we were considering maybe New York, but Chudnow said, I'm going to LA, you guys, whatever we do, I'm just going to LA. So we decided, yeah, we'll go to LA. And that's became the movie. Loaded up a U-Haul truck and took the show to LA. We remodeled an old warehouse and made it into a theater. We got it inspected. We hammered and nailed the theater together, just like we did in Madison. And then we opened in October of 1972.
Were your shows in Los Angeles always sold out?
Not at first. We didn't have any budget for publicity, advertising, we didn't have a dime. So what we did was we used tricks, and we had a preview that was filled, and then that was inviting press, and we got very good reviews. But we only had I think, just Friday and Saturday, 8 o'clock shows, and they were about half filled. And one of the things we did, I mean, one time it appeared that almost there were more people on stage than there were in the audience. And it was a little embarrassing. How do you do a show for like 17 people? But so what we just told everybody, come on up. We lived above the theater. We gave them a tour of the backstage and the green room and our apartments and everything. And so it kind of broke the ice. We kind of got to know the audience, and we did a show. But what really broke through was there was a huge billboard in the vacant lot right next to the theater, and we rented it for a month. It probably cost, $250 or something. And we put on the billboard, "This is it, Kentucky Fried Theater," with an arrow pointing down to the theater. And we then organized the whole neighborhood, recruited as many people as we could, probably about 30 or 35 people, to do a protest against the sign. And we said, we told when we invited the media, and they were intrigued by this, and we said, there's a huge protest. A big corporation is planning to tear down the sign and plant a tree in its place. And we held placards saying, "Save the sign." So KBC covered it, and the LA Times, and after that, we were filled on the two shows, 8 o'clock shows. And then the word of mouth just spread, and we got great reviews. Nobody had seen anything like it. It was completely different from what was being shown in live theater at that time. And then we called the show My Nose, so that our listing in the LA Times calendar section every week read, "My nose runs continuously." So we did all sorts of stupid stuff,
Sure.
and as well as, but it was mainly word of mouth. I mean, people said they laughed so hard that their jaws ached. Yeah. And they said it was a great date thing to bring someone on a date. So.
Do you remember Dick Ebersol and Lorne Michaels coming to watch the shows?
I do. I remember it was sometime in early 1975, and we thought they were recruiting writers for some show that they were starting, and we thought, well, okay, maybe they'll hire us as writers, because we wanted to somehow get something going. We didn't want to be on stage when we were 35. So, but all we knew was they were hotshot producers from New York. But later, I read there were a couple of books written about Saturday Night Live. And evidently, Lorne Michaels was trying to pitch Saturday Night Live to Dick Ebersol. And he said, the idea is I want to do Kentucky Fried Theater on national TV. And so Dick Ebersol didn't especially like the idea, although both of them reportedly just loved the show. They laughed hard at the show. But eventually, I guess Lorne did convince Ebersol to do the show, and the result was Saturday Night Live.
And did you realize in the moment the effect you were having on comedy?
Not at all. We just were having fun doing what we like to do. We were making money. We were able to pay our actors, which no other theater was real. Everybody was just doing stuff for free in those days, and they were glad if they were paid anything. But we paid the actors, and we were starting to think about our comedy and what we were doing. So in Madison, for example, it was just anything goes. We just said this, but somebody at the preview, a friend of Jim's, said, the show was great. I love the show, but in this one sketch, you were doing a joke on a joke. And we said, a joke? What's that? And so he explained, you can't do two jokes at once. If a character in the foreground is being funny, the background has to be serious, and vice versa. So that was our first rule. And then eventually we evolved our 15 rules. both, from the theater and in our movies once we did Airplane. And we actually got a lot of the ideas from reviews that we got. People pointed out things. I mean, people, the reviewers were pointing out what we did right. So we thought, okay, yeah, our discipline in doing the comedy was working.
And if anyone pointed out that you were doing something wrong, did you brush it off, or did you sort of learn from it?
No one ever did point out.
Oh, okay, well, that's good.
Wrong. Yeah, the show was so funny. I don't think people thought that deeply about, well, this little thing didn't work. But this was a friend of Jim's after the preview, and he pointed out some things. But we were very tough on ourselves and self-critical, and doing the theater for 5 years, it was a laboratory where we were able to develop our style, and we figured out what worked, and it was also great fun, and we were making money, and also during that time we wrote Airplane.
Right, and I know you've said previously that your films, the audience kind of tells you whether you've gone too far, so it sounds like the same thing happened.
Right,
with the theater.
The same thing basically happens. When we do the movie, it's not a live audience, of course, but the movie ends up at about 80 minutes long, and we preview 95 or 100 minutes, and there's 20 minutes in there that isn't funny. So we let the audience tell us, what the pace is, and when something just doesn't work, we just cut it out, and we're still editing it. Jerry and Jim and I did a recut of Airplane about 5 or 6 years ago. And because we screened it so many times for audiences in the ensuing 40 years that we noticed, well, we could cut this a little, tighter. And so it's often advertised as the director's cut of Airplane. People think, oh, great, we're going to see a lot of more material, but it's the only director's cut which is actually shorter than the original.
Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. Here is a complimentary question from our book Story Questions.